I'm David Carter, a veteran living in the suburban neighborhood of Willow Creek, Oregon, where peace was once all I knew. My life here was gentle, until Ryan Mitchell, the arrogant new neighbor, showed up and turned it into a battle of frustration and humiliation. He tosses trash onto my lawn, mocks my protests, claims the neighborhood as his personal turf, and ignores every plea for fairness I make, confident he can do whatever he wants without anyone daring to stop him. But he doesn't know that I, a man hardened by military service with a deep sense of resolve and justice, am not the type to back down easily. With determination, solidarity from like-minded neighbors, and a plan to expose the truth, I've begun a journey not just to reclaim my lawn, but to restore the respect and peace this neighborhood deserves. What followed was a courtroom showdown, and a reckoning no one saw coming. But let me start from the beginning. Before diving into the story, comment where you're watching from, and don't forget to subscribe so you never miss the latest video. I'm the kind of man people in Willow Creek respect, a decent veteran, a devoted husband, and a father who's worked tirelessly to provide a good life for his family. My little house, with its white picket fence and perfectly trimmed lawn, is the pride of the neighborhood. For years this quiet suburban street was my sanctuary, a place where kids rode bikes, neighbors waved hello, and peace reigned supreme. I remember the moment clearly. I was holding a steaming cup of coffee, stepping onto my porch to check if the flowers needed watering. But then I saw it, a mess of crumpled beer cans, stinking food scraps, and a torn plastic bag, sprawled across the lush green lawn I'd tended for so long. I sighed, thinking someone must have carelessly dropped it passing by. Maybe it came from the new neighbor across the street. I'd seen an old pickup truck parked in his yard and some boxes piled up since he moved in. I decided to walk over, waving at the man unloading stuff from his truck. "Hi, I'm David from across the street," I said, my voice warm and genuine. "Welcome to the neighborhood." He, introducing himself as Ryan Mitchell, barely looked up. "Yeah, thanks," he muttered, not bothering to shake hands. I glanced at the trash on my lawn, then continued. "I don't mean to bother you, but there's a bag of garbage on my lawn. Could you keep an eye out?" Ryan shrugged, a dismissive little shrug. "I'll check later. Busy now," he said, turning his back and carrying on. I stood there for a moment, a bit stunned. Maybe he's just tired, I told myself, trying to be understanding. I figured I'd give him time. Maybe he was stressed from moving, and a little patience from me would sort it out. I was wrong. That night, I heard blaring music from his place, echoing through the quiet neighborhood. Loud laughter, clinking bottles, a party, obviously. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, trying to ignore it, but the noise pounded in my head. Margaret rolled over, whispering, "Aren't you going to do something?" I shook my head. "Just one night," I said, though I wasn't sure I believed it myself. The next morning, I stepped outside, hoping things would settle back to normal. But when I looked at my lawn, my heart sank. A fresh pile of trash sat there, bigger than before, with scattered beer cans, greasy paper plates, and a torn plastic bag spilling its foul stench. This wasn't an accidental drop anymore. Someone had dumped it on purpose. I glanced at Ryan's house, seeing his old truck still parked out front, a few cans rolling near his boxes. My suspicions sharpened, but I still wanted to keep the peace. I grabbed my gardening gloves, cleaned up the mess, and told myself I'd talk to him again, this time more seriously. I knocked on Ryan's door that afternoon, when the music had died down, and the neighborhood was quiet again. He answered, wearing a wrinkled t-shirt, a beer can in hand. "What's up?" he asked, his tone curt. I took a deep breath, keeping my voice steady. "Hi Ryan. I don't want to bother you, but there was more trash on my lawn this morning. I think it might be from your place. Could you watch out for it?" He stared at me, then smirked. Not a friendly smile, but a smug, dismissive one. "Relax," he said, waving me off like I was overreacting. "It's not a big deal." He turned away, slamming the door in my face. I stood there, fists clenched, feeling like I'd just been slapped. But I still told myself, maybe he just needs time to learn the rules here. That evening I wrote a short note. "Ryan, please don't toss trash on my lawn. Thanks." I slipped it under his door, hoping a polite message would work better. But the next morning, when I stepped outside, I saw my note crumpled up and tossed back onto my lawn, alongside a new pile of garbage, this time with broken glass bottles and a leaking trash bag. I picked up the paper, seeing his scrawled handwriting over mine. "Mind your own business." My blood started to heat up. I looked at the trash, then at Ryan's house. He wasn't just littering. He was treating the whole neighborhood like his personal domain. The music blared from his place again that night, along with loud laughter and clinking bottles. An empty beer can rolled from his yard onto my sidewalk, like he wanted me to know he didn't care. Margaret stepped out, standing beside me, her voice worried. David, you can't let this go on. I nodded, but inside, I was still wrestling with it. After the third time cleaning trash off my lawn, I felt my patience wearing thin, like a rope stretched too far. I tried being polite, tried being understanding, but Ryan Mitchell didn't care. He wasn't just dumping trash on my yard, he'd made it a habit, a statement that he could do whatever he wanted, and no one would touch him. Every few days, a new pile appeared, beer cans, leftover food bags, even an old broken chair I had to drag to the curb. My lawn, the pride I'd nurtured for years, now looked like a war zone. Grass yellowed from leaking garbage, a stench rising that forced me to keep the windows shut every night. Margaret noticed the change in me. David, you can't keep letting this happen, she said one evening as I sat silently in the living room, staring out at the lawn through the window. The music from Ryan's place blared again, paired with loud laughter and clinking bottles. I nodded, but inside, I was still wrestling. I didn't want to turn this into a war, I just wanted my neighborhood back. But then one morning, when I stepped outside and saw a new pile, this time with broken glass bottles scattered everywhere, I felt a rage flare up I couldn't suppress. I picked up the shards, hands trembling, and realized my patience had hit its limit. I decided to try talking to Ryan one more time. I knocked on his door, keeping my voice calm, despite the fire inside me. He answered, still in that wrinkled t-shirt, beer in hand. What now? He asked, his tone sharp. Ryan, I really need you to stop throwing trash on my lawn, I said, forcing politeness. It's ruining my yard, and I don't think you want this neighborhood to become a dump. He stared at me, then smirked, that smug grin I'd come to know too well. Relax, he said, waving me off like I was a nuisance. It's not a big deal. He turned away, slamming the door in my face again. I stood there, fists clenched, feeling like I'd been slapped. Not for the first time, but the third. I went back home, wrote another note. Ryan, please stop throwing trash on my lawn. It's really causing a problem. Thanks. I slipped it under his door, hoping a clearer message might make him think twice. But the next morning, I found my note crumpled and tossed back onto my yard, alongside a new pile, this time with a leaking trash bag soaking into the grass. I picked up the paper, seeing his scrawl. Don't make a fuss. I stood on my lawn, staring at the mess, then at Ryan's house. He wasn't just ignoring me, he was mocking me, disrespecting me, and it made my blood boil. That night, the music from Ryan's place blared again, louder than ever. I looked out, seeing empty beer cans rolling from his yard onto my sidewalk. He stood there, laughing with his buddies, like the whole neighborhood was his playground. Another morning, as I tried to clean up a fresh pile, I slipped on the filthy water leaking from a bag, falling onto the grass, hands coated in its stench. That was the last straw. I stood up staring at the trash, then at Ryan's house, anger surging in my chest. I walked inside, hands still shaking. Margaret looked at me, worried. David, are you okay? She asked. I didn't answer right away, just stared out the window, the trash on my lawn like a taunt. I tried a different approach, hoping to make Ryan see his actions weren't just affecting me, but all of Willow Creek. I sat at the kitchen table, hot coffee in hand, staring at the lawn now stained from leaking garbage. I sighed, set the mug down with a soft clink, and grabbed a piece of paper. In neat handwriting, I wrote, Hi, Ryan, I noticed trash on my lawn again. Please don't dump it there anymore. Thanks, David. I folded it carefully, walked to his house, and slipped it under his door. I stood outside for a moment, feeling the chilly air bite my skin, a flicker of hope in my chest. Surely a direct, polite note like this would make him reconsider. But when I stepped out that afternoon to check, my heart sank. The trash was still there, untouched, and my note was crumpled and tossed back onto my lawn, with Ryan's scrawl over it. Leave me alone. I clenched my fists, knuckles whitening, as a wave of frustration surged through me. I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm, but inside, I whispered, this can't go on. Margaret stood at the door, watching me with concerned eyes. Maybe you should call the police, she suggested, her voice soft. I hesitated. I'm not the type to drag authorities into petty neighborhood spats. I've always believed neighbors can sort things out themselves, but this wasn't petty anymore. So the next day, I called the local police. 2 officers arrived quickly, their flashing lights drawing curious glances from a few neighbors. I led them to the lawn, pointing at the mess, this time a torn trash bag and some broken bottles. It keeps showing up like this, I explained. I've tried talking to him, but it's no use. Ryan stepped out of his house, arms crossed, that smirk on his face. He's always complaining, he told the officers, jerking his chin at me. I didn't do anything wrong. The officers assessed the situation, then turned to me with apologetic looks. "We're sorry, Mr. Carter," one said. "Local laws aren't clear on this. Without direct proof he dumped it. We can't do more than warn him." They spoke to Ryan briefly, but he just shrugged, his smirk widening as their car pulled away. He turned to me, his tone dripping with mockery. "Nice try, old man. Guess you're not as important as you think." His words cut into my pride, not just because they targeted me, but because they carried the smugness of someone who thought he was untouchable. That night, I sat in the living room, staring at the TV without really watching. The music from Ryan's place thumped again, grating through the walls like nails on a chalkboard. I felt a mix of anger and helplessness, a feeling I hadn't known in years. Margaret sat beside me, resting a hand on my shoulder. "David, you can't keep letting him win," she said. I nodded, but inside, I still didn't know what to do. I tried every peaceful route, talking face to face, leaving notes, even calling the authorities. But Ryan Mitchell wouldn't budge. He kept dumping trash on my lawn, each time worse than the last, like he was proving I couldn't stop him. I kept cleaning it up, kept staying calm, but inside, a slow-burning fire was growing. I didn't want to admit it, but my patience, the kind I'd prided myself on since my army days, was draining day by day. One morning, I stepped outside with my coffee, hoping for a rare moment of peace. But the sight before me stopped me cold. Ryan's latest trash pile wasn't just a few bags. He'd set up a dump zone right on my lawn. He'd used old wooden stakes, tied rope around them, and planted a handwritten sign, "Community Drop Point, Keep Out." Inside, I saw torn trash bags, beer cans, and a broken chair I was sure came from his party. I stood there, my breath forming little clouds in the cold air, my coffee mug slipping from my hand and shattering on the stoop. My lawn, my pride, now looked like a public dump. My pulse raced, my jaw clenched. Did he think he could claim my space like this? I took a deep breath, marched to Ryan's house, and pounded on his door so hard the sound echoed in the still air. He opened it, leaning against the frame with that familiar smirk. "Morning, David," he said, his tone mockingly innocent. "Something wrong?" I pointed at my lawn. "What is this, Ryan? You've gone too far. You're turning my yard into a dump." He shrugged, that shrug I'd learned to hate. "It's my neighborhood, David," he said, his voice smug. "I need a spot for stuff. You've got all that empty space. Why make a big deal?" I felt the blood rush to my head. "This isn't your neighborhood," I snapped. "This is my home, and I'm telling you to clean it up now." He laughed, then slammed the door in my face. I stood there, fists clenched, feeling slapped again, but this time, I couldn't take it anymore. I returned home, my blood boiling. Margaret looked at me from the kitchen doorway, her eyes filled with worry. "David, what's wrong?" she asked. I didn't answer right away, just stepped onto the porch, staring at Ryan's dump zone under the pale sunlight. I wasn't just angry, I was determined. This wasn't about trash anymore. It was about respect, about boundaries, and Ryan had crossed them blatantly. I knew I had to do something, not just for me, but for all of Willow Creek. That night, a heavy rain poured down. I sat in the living room, listening to the rain tap against the roof, thinking at least it might wash away some of the stench from the trash pile. But the next morning, when I stepped outside, I could hardly believe my eyes. The rainwater had swept trash from Ryan's zone across my lawn, clogging the drain in front of my house. A filthy stream, mixed with cans and plastic bags, flowed straight into my garage, soaking my gardening tools and the boxes of military keepsakes. I stood there, staring at the chaos, feeling like my entire world had just been violated. That was the final straw. Margaret ran out, seeing the dirty water in the garage. "David, this is too much," she said, her voice trembling. I nodded, saying nothing. The trash, the filthy water and Ryan's scrawled signs stood like a final taunt. I couldn't keep giving in. I'd tried peace, I'd tried patience, but Ryan left me no choice. I sat at the kitchen table, fists clenched, and told myself, if he won't respect me, it's time I teach him a lesson he'll never forget. I didn't know exactly what I'd do yet, and I needed help, so I called on the neighbors. People I trusted were just as fed up with Ryan's attitude to stand together. I started by going door to door in Willow Creek. I knocked on Evelyn Harper's door, an older woman who'd been a lawyer before retiring, someone I'd always respected for her sense of fairness. "Evelyn, I need to talk," I said, as she welcomed me in. I told her everything, from the first trash bag to the dump zone, and the water flooding my garage. She listened, her sharp eyes flashing with indignation. "He's always making noise at night," she said, shaking her head. "I've tried to ignore it, but this is too much." I nodded. "I need your help to stop him," I said. She gave a small smile. I'll help David. Next, I met Jake, the 10-year-old kid living a few houses down. I'd seen him playing ball on the street, but lately he'd steered clear of Ryan's area. You got any trouble with him, Jake? I asked as he rode his bike in his yard. He stopped, looking at me shyly. He yelled at me when my ball rolled into his yard. He said, told me to stay away or he'd throw it out. I clenched my fists. Don't worry, Jake. We'll handle this, I said, and he nodded, his eyes lighting up with a bit of hope. Finally, I went to Luis, the neighborhood gardener, who often passed by my house. Luis, you notice anything odd near Ryan's place? I asked as he trimmed bushes nearby. He nodded, his voice low. I've seen him toss bags with chemical smells. Not safe at all. I raised an eyebrow. Can you help me prove it? I asked. He grinned. Sure thing, David. That evening, I invited everyone to my house. The air in the living room was tense but hopeful. Margaret brewed coffee, and Ethan, just home from school, brought his laptop to take notes. I stood in the middle of the room, looking around. Evelyn, Jake, Luis, and a few other neighbors who'd agreed to join. Thanks for coming, I began. Ryan's gone too far. He's not just ruining my lawn. He's ruining this neighborhood. I need your help to stop him. I recounted everything, from the first bags to the dump zone, and the dirty water. They nodded, sharing their own complaints. He knocked over my trash can last week, and didn't even apologize. One said, my kids won't play outside because of his noise. Another added. Evelyn stood up, her voice firm. We need evidence, she said. I can help draft a complaint, but we have to document everything. Photos, videos, anything showing what he's doing. I nodded. I've got a camera up, but I need you all to keep an eye on him too. We made a plan. Luis agreed to collect trash samples to test for chemicals. Jake would alert me whenever he saw Ryan do something suspicious. Ethan offered. I can edit the camera footage, make the times and actions clear. I looked at him, smiling. Good job, Ethan. Evelyn nodded. If we work together, he won't be able to deny it. The mood in the room shifted, from frustration to resolve. I felt a spark of hope. I wasn't alone anymore. A new energy surged through me. I wasn't just one man against Ryan Mitchell anymore. I had a team, a shared goal, and a clear plan. The days ahead in Willow Creek weren't about passive endurance anymore. We started taking action. I knew that to beat Ryan, we needed undeniable proof, something even he couldn't shrug off. And I was determined to turn every piece of trash, every noise from his house, into my weapons. I began by reviewing the security camera I'd set up earlier. Each night I sat with Ethan in the living room, going over the footage. My son, with his tech-savvy student skills, edited the clips, time-stamping and sharpening them. Look here, Dad, Ethan said one night, pointing at the screen. He tossed a bag at 2 a.m. Tuesday. I saw Ryan's figure in the streetlight, holding a big trash bag, hurling it onto my lawn. I nodded, a mix of satisfaction and anger rising. Great work, Ethan. We've got him. But I knew video alone wasn't enough. I needed more concrete evidence. I called Luis, the neighborhood gardener, and asked, can you grab some trash samples from my lawn, especially that chemical stuff you mentioned? Luis agreed instantly. The next morning he showed up with rubber gloves and sealed plastic bags. He picked up an old plastic bottle from Ryan's pile, still holding a yellow liquid with a sharp smell. This isn't regular trash, Luis said, his voice low. I'll send it to a lab friend. I clapped his shoulder. Thanks, Luis. This could be the key. Jake, the neighbor kid, pitched in his own way. I told him to watch for anything suspicious from Ryan. One afternoon he ran to my house, panting. I saw him throw beer cans over the fence this morning, he said, eyes wide. I smiled, handing him a pen and paper. Write down the time for me, Jake. Every detail matters. He nodded, scribbling away, and I felt proud of his eagerness. Evelyn, with her lawyer experience, kept everything on track. I brought all the videos and notes to her house. We need to organize this clearly, she said, spreading papers across her table. She helped me draft a detailed report. Times Ryan dumped trash, descriptions of each pile, and its impact on my lawn. If we take this to court, it has to be airtight, she said. I nodded. I trust you, Evelyn. I just want him to pay. She smiled. He won't get away, David. Meanwhile, Ryan seemed oblivious. He kept going, blaring music from his house every weekend. New trash appearing on my lawn like clockwork defiance. Once I saw him in his yard, laughing with friends, tossing an empty beer can onto my sidewalk. He didn't know my camera was rolling, that Jake was watching from afar, that Luis had sent samples for testing. He thought he still held all the cards, but I knew a storm was brewing. A few days later, Luis called me. Lab results are in, he said over the phone. The liquid in that bottle is a toxic chemical, not allowed in regular trash. I gripped the phone, feeling like I just found a silver bullet. Perfect, Luis. Can you send me the report? I asked. Already did, he replied. I opened the email, read the results, and smiled. This wasn't just evidence, it was a knockout punch. I brought everything to Evelyn. Ethan's videos, Jake's notes, Luis's chemical report, and our drafted complaint. She reviewed it, nodding with satisfaction. This is a solid case, David, she said. He can't argue his way out. I looked at the evidence on the table, confidence swelling inside me. I was ready. Ryan might think he was untouchable, but my neighbors and I had built a wall of proof he couldn't climb. I glanced out at his dump zone still standing on my lawn. He'll learn he messed up soon enough, I whispered, resolve burning in me. The court date arrived and I woke early, a mix of nerves and determination in my chest. I'd been waiting for this moment since the dirty water flooded my garage, since Ryan Mitchell turned my lawn into his personal dump. I put on the suit Margaret had ironed the night before, clutching the thick file of evidence my neighbors and I had painstakingly gathered. Margaret squeezed my hand before I left. You've got this, David, she said, her voice steady. I nodded, feeling like a soldier heading into battle, not with guns but with truth. The local Oregon courthouse was a grand building, its marble steps gleaming in the sunlight. As I walked in, I saw Ryan in the hallway, looking relaxed like he was just out for a stroll. He glanced at me, smirking, that smug grin I knew too well. But I didn't let it shake me. I entered the courtroom, seeing my neighbors, Evelyn, Luis, Jake, and a few others already seated, their eyes full of expectation. My heart warmed. They weren't just here to watch. They were here to back me, to back Willow Creek. The trial began, and Ryan's lawyer went first. Your Honor, he said, his tone smooth but confident. These claims are overblown. My client's actions caused no real harm. This is just a minor neighbor dispute, not worth the court's time. Ryan nodded, leaning back in his chair like it was already settled. But then Evelyn stood, not as an official lawyer, but as my representative. She looked at me, nodded, and I knew it was time. Your Honor, Evelyn began, her voice calm but sharp. We'll prove Mr. Mitchell's actions weren't just disruptive, but deliberately harmful to Mr. Carter and the Willow Creek community. She laid out the evidence methodically. First, Ethan's videos, clear footage of Ryan tossing trash onto my lawn at night, timestamps precise. Next, photos of the dump zone he'd built, with its community drop point sign like a taunt. Then Luis's report, lab results showing toxic chemicals in Ryan's trash, not allowed in regular waste. Finally, she read statements from Jake and other neighbors about the noise, scattered trash and disruption Ryan caused. The courtroom fell silent, as each piece unfolded. Ryan started fidgeting, his smirk fading. This is ridiculous, he burst out, interrupting. I didn't hurt anyone. Trash is everywhere. Judge Judith Klein, a stern woman with eyes like knives, raised a hand to silence him. Mr. Mitchell, you'll get your turn, she said, her tone firm. When his chance came, Ryan stood, voice full of frustration. Your Honor, I've worked hard my whole life. I don't get why some garbage turned into this. People are overreacting. No one's really hurt. Judge Klein leaned forward, staring straight at Ryan. Mr. Mitchell, today's evidence says otherwise, she said. Dumping toxic waste, setting up an illegal dump on someone else's property, and disturbing neighbors isn't minor. It's a disregard for community standards and personal property rights. Ryan glared at her, face flushed, but had no reply. A wave of relief washed over me. After hours of arguments, the judge delivered her ruling. Mr. Mitchell, she said, her voice echoing in the room, your behavior shows a pattern of disrespect for this community. You're ordered to clean all trash from Mr. Carter's property immediately. Additionally, you'll pay fines for violating local ordinances and compensate Mr. Carter for damages, including legal fees and property harm. The courtroom buzzed with approving murmurs. I glanced at Evelyn, seeing her small smile, but Ryan wouldn't go down quietly. I'll appeal, he shouted, jumping up, his chair scraping the floor. This isn't over. Judge Klein remained unfazed. You're free to appeal, Mr. Mitchell, she said, but with evidence this overwhelming, I doubt another court will rule differently. A few people chuckled softly, and I couldn't help but smile too. The judge motioned for Ryan to sit, and he did, scowling. As the trial ended, I stepped outside, surrounded by neighbors. You did it, David, Luis said, clapping my shoulder. Thanks, man, Jake said, grinning wide. I looked at them, feeling lighter. This fight hadn't been easy, but standing there, among those who'd fought with me, I knew it was worth it. In the days after the ruling, I stood on my porch looking at my lawn, relieved to see it free of Ryan's trash. He'd been forced to clean it all. I heard the stakes being yanked up, the bags dragged off one cold morning. He worked in silence. No blaring music, no rowdy friends. For the first time in months, my lawn was free, and I felt like I could breathe fresh air after a storm. The neighbors noticed the change too. Jake was back riding his bike around the neighborhood, his ball rolling across the street without Ryan's threats looming over him. Luis walked by, waving at me with a smile. Looks a lot better now, David, he said, pointing at my lawn as it slowly recovered. I nodded, a sense of pride creeping in. It wasn't just my lawn that was saved. Willow Creek itself seemed to be coming back to life. The blaring music from Ryan's house no longer filled the nights, and empty beer cans stopped littering the sidewalk. He stayed quiet, maybe because of the court ruling, or maybe because he knew he had no room left to push. But this victory wasn't just about stopping Ryan. It inspired the neighborhood. One afternoon, I invited everyone over. Evelyn, Luis, Jake, and a few other neighbors. Margaret prepared coffee and pastries, the warm aroma filling the living room. I stood in the middle of the room, looking around. Thank you all for doing this with me, I said. We didn't just protect my lawn, we protected Willow Creek. Evelyn nodded. We should do something to keep this from happening again, she said. I think a small committee, not too formal, just to handle issues before they escalate. Everyone agreed, and I felt proud seeing my neighborhood, more united than ever. We set up some simple rules together, about trash disposal, keeping quiet at night, and respecting each other's space. Luis volunteered to monitor the neighborhood's trash, while Jake eagerly suggested, I can tell everyone if I see someone dumping stuff. I laughed. Good job, Jake. Evelyn wrote it all down, and I was voted onto the committee, not because I wanted power, but because people trusted me. As the meeting ended, I looked around, seeing smiles on everyone's faces, and I knew the fight with Ryan had sparked something bigger, a stronger community. Ryan, meanwhile, kept a low profile. He didn't appeal like he'd threatened. Maybe he knew he had no shot with the mountain of evidence we'd gathered. A few neighbors who still talked to him told me he seemed bitter, but didn't dare stir trouble anymore. He started hiring a professional trash service, and the dump zone on my lawn became just a memory. I wasn't sure if he'd truly learned his lesson, but his behavior had changed, and for me that was enough. One afternoon, I stood in the yard, holding a hose and watering the grass as it slowly turned green again. Margaret stepped out, an envelope in hand. This just came for you, she said, handing it to me. I opened it, finding a handwritten letter from the neighbors, a thank you signed by Evelyn, Luis, Jake, and many others. To David Carter, it read, thank you for your persistence and courage that brought us closer together. You reminded us, we're stronger united. I finished reading, feeling my throat tighten. Margaret smiled. Hang it up, she said. I nodded, finding a spot on my study wall, next to my military medals. The letter wasn't just gratitude, it was a symbol of what we'd achieved together. As things settled down, I often sat on the porch in the evenings, quietly watching the sunset paint the sky gold. In my hand was a warm coffee mug, and in my ears were the crisp laughs of kids playing in the distance, mixed with the hum of neighbors chatting over fences. A cool breeze brushed through, rustling the flowers I'd carefully replanted on my lawn. My neighborhood was alive again, not just a place I lived, but a place I belonged. I let my mind drift to the journey, from that first trash bag to the courtroom win, and felt a rare pride swell inside me. I thought back to my army days when I learned that perseverance and unity could overcome any challenge. The fight with Ryan Mitchell was no different. A battle without bullets, but full of tension and resolve. I'd faced an arrogant man who thought he could trample the respect my neighbors and I deserved. But I didn't give up. With help from Margaret, Ethan, Evelyn, Luis, Jake, and the whole neighborhood, I proved justice wasn't out of reach. It was something we could claim when we stood together. The thank you letter from the neighbors now hung on my study wall, beside my military medals. Every time I looked at it, I remembered the tough days, the mornings cleaning trash in the stench, the sleepless nights with Ryan's music, the moment dirty water flooded my garage. But I also recalled the victories. Evelyn's smile as we drafted the report, Jake's enthusiasm as he took notes, Margaret's proud look when I walked out of court. That letter wasn't just thanks. It was proof of the community's strength I'd helped build. I stood up, stepping onto the lawn, feeling the soft grass under my feet. It wasn't perfect like before, but it was healing, just like Willow Creek, just like me. I'd faced a big challenge, and I didn't just survive it. I made my neighborhood better. Ryan might never admit he was wrong, but his behavior shifted, and for me that was a big enough win. I taught him a lesson he'd always remember, not with fists, but with persistence and truth. This journey wasn't just my story, it was Willow Creek's, the story of people who stood with me for what's right. It reminded me that even the stubbornest challenges can be beaten when we unite for justice and respect. I took a sip of coffee, feeling the peace I'd fought to reclaim, and knew it was worth it. Not just for me, but for all of us. The story HOA neighbor dumps trash on my lawn every week, so I delivered a lesson they'll always recall, reflects a very real slice of life in the US today, especially in suburban neighborhoods, where community and mutual respect matter deeply. David Carter, a veteran in Willow Creek, faced Ryan Mitchell, an arrogant neighbor who kept dumping trash on his lawn, not just damaging property, but challenging community values. David's fight, from patient talks, gathering evidence with cameras and chemical-laden trash samples, to rallying neighbors like Evelyn, Luis, and Jake to take Ryan to court, highlights common issues in modern American society: personal conflicts, the role of homeowners associations, and the power of collective action. Judge Judith Klein's ruling, forcing Ryan to clean up, pay fines and compensate, plus the birth of a neighborhood committee, shows how Americans often turn to law and community organizing to settle disputes. The lessons from this story are specific and practical for real life in the US. First, like David patiently documenting Ryan's actions with videos and chemical reports, you should gather clear evidence when facing injustice, crucial in a law-driven society like America. Second, David's rallying of neighbors shows you shouldn't hesitate to seek community support. In the US, where HOA culture and good neighbor spirit run strong, unity can wield real power. Finally, the courtroom win, and the neighbor's thank you letter remind you that patience and doing right pay off, even if the process is tough. Stand up for what's just, like David did for his lawn in Willow Creek, because in today's America, respect and justice don't come free. You have to fight for them. Thanks for following my journey in Willow Creek. If you liked this story, subscribe so you don't miss more community lessons. See you in the next video, where we'll explore more ways to protect respect and peace in our neighborhoods.